Hello and welcome to the Horror House Podcast. I'm Dave.
And I am Chris. We are two dudes that like to talk about horror, from movies to real life. And tonight, Dave, we're talking books, movies, TV, and radio.
And some real life.
And some, yeah, this is true. We're running the gamut. And it's all about the War of the Worlds, which is something I've been dying to do this episode almost since we started. So here we are finally.
This is such a big topic. We are really biting off a lot here, just leaving it open to like everything War of the Worlds. But
yeah,
we're trying to give it to you. Clearly, we're going to hit a couple things more in depth than others, and clearly, I mean, this is one of the most republished books that ever has been.
I read it's never been out of print.
Yeah, I have read that. I have read that. So
bonkers.
Suck it, Bible. But War of the Worlds, and it's such an amazing time to cover this. We're recording this on a Thursday, the day after we have people testifying in open Congress about the existence of recovered craft from an alien world, and Chris, recovered biologics.
Yes, non-human biologics. Like, what does that mean? It's crazy times. Which, if you want to hear a little more prior to those hearings, just a couple weeks, we did one of our world-renowned UFO UAP real life horror episode. If you want to check that out, go
World
do that.
famous.
But I mean, or just stick around and listen to some more of the Worlds, or you can change it up. It's up to you. It's your ears. But stay with the Horror House because, why would you not?
We're giving you what you need. Electrolytes. It's what plants crave.
Oh, God.
Hey,
Bronte?
Chris.
Bronte? What was that called? What? Yes.
Bronte. I think it was Bronte. How about we hit an ad and jump into it? Because we've got a lot to cover tonight.
We are back, and let's just get right into it. Before we get into H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds, I don't know that I knew that it was the first alien invasion book or what, but I certainly knew it was one of the first. But there was, I don't know if you know this, Dave, or Rabble, but there was a book just how many years? 6 years prior to War of the Worlds by Robert Potter, an Australian clergyman, who his book, The Germ Growers, came out in 1892, and it has kind of from what I've read, a little bit of a invasion of the body snatchers kind of a thing going on.
Okay.
Which is, I mean, to be the first of that kind, obviously it's not as widely regarded as the War of the Worlds, but there was something before War of the Worlds, which I was like, I have to bring it up, even if just in passing. So,
okay.
Here's your roses.
I did not.
Robert Potter.
I did not know that. And so now we know, and knowing is half the battle.
Absolutely.
I know that the War of the Worlds was first published in 18 something.
The 1898.
1898.
But it may have been prior to. You know how some authors will like kind of piecemeal their novel into parts for like magazines or like those kind of Reader's Digest-y kind of things. I swear I read something about that with H.G. Wells. Like, it got published in a thing before it was its actual own book. And
I think I did read that.
You H.G. Wells experts can clarify that. But and I mean, even that still is a big thing for authors, which it seems as a musician, I want to put stuff together in a package, and like this song has to follow this song, has to follow that song. It's precisely the way you want it. So when you split it up like that, it's still chronologically right, but it intrigues me.
I mean, but if you break it up into a magazine, that's kind of like releasing singles, which it doesn't
point.
feel like that gets done as much these days.
Good point.
I could be wrong. Until the newest Metallica, and there were several singles released prior to that third of an album being dropped.
That is a good point. Yeah.
So the canals on Mars were first discovered in 1877. So I think that's really seems like when astronomy and the public consciousness really took off of, hey, Mars might be civilized planet. We have these canals now.
What year was that?
Now we know that they're not, but
1878, you said?
1877.
77.
Giovanni Schiaparelli.
So, and a young H.G. Wells would have been 11 years old at that time. Very impressionable age for a young boy. Maybe that had, maybe if he caught wind of that, maybe that sparked a little thing in the back of his brain, perhaps.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that had to take, drive the public at large wild with speculation and wonder. So I can't type, Chris. I don't know if you know that.
Are you a hunter and a pecker? I'm not calling you a pecker, Dave. I mean, like
I'm a little bit of a pecker.
That's not a term people use to put down people anymore. It just seems like a lost put down.
Yeah.
You pecker, you peckerhead. Sorry.
I prefer, if I'm going to go that route, I prefer jive turkey.
I love that.
I feel like that really gets them. So if I look, 1985, I was 11 years old, and what was discovered when I was 11? Well, the first proof of de Brognie's theorem, which is the mathematical theorem, was released that year. The first published proof of the no wandering domain theorem. Oh, more mathematical theorems. That sparks a boy's wonder.
Okay.
Carl Sagan's Contact was released that year. I knew nothing about it. The first artificial heart patient left the hospital in February. So I think he actually got the heart in 84, left the hospital in February 85. There's just,
I have you beat, Dave.
Sure. What was discovered? What was invented or discovered when you were 11, Chris?
This can't be right because the internet was alive before 1994 when I was 11. But this Business Insider article would have you believe that the World Wide Web was born in 1994. I guess maybe in that iteration of it, perhaps.
I would say that's probably,
because I guess before that it was a different thing. But that I would say that certainly influenced me, the internet. But I didn't get it for another fucking 7 years.
Sure. But I mean, just the idea that exists at that time.
Yeah.
What year were you? What year were you 11?
94.
Oh, God damn, Chris! I'm an old ass man.
We're both old, different degrees of old. But we didn't come up with one of our great works between the two of us, based on something that happened when we were 11. We're kind of throwing a shot in the dark to say that the discovery of Mars canals influenced H.G. Wells. Maybe they didn't, but
I mean, I'm going to believe that they did until his ghost appears before me and tells me otherwise.
That is fair. That is fair. So I should, before we get too deep into the H.G. Wells-ishness of it all, if you've listened to our earlier episodes on Lovecraft, you know that we respect the artwork, the art of these guys, but we can still criticize the artist in some of their ways. And though Wells was kind of progressive in ways and like wanting this utopia and equality, he was weirdly into eugenics. I mean, we talk about things like these were not dumb guys, so part of that is a product of their time, and if they were around today, you could only assume that wouldn't quite be what they would be buying into.
I mean, you know, you have to judge people by the time they were.
It's a big
they
factor.
Came up, you know, and that has such a factor on somebody's belief system and things like that. But also, and this is another Davism. I can't express this enough. Don't fucking hero worship. Don't hero worship.
Yeah, people you don't know.
You know, that's just your best bet. You can really like somebody's work, like and really like the shit that they create. Don't hero worship the person. You know, they're still a person. They're still flawed.
Except Cronenberg, who I have a shrine of now.
Cronenberg taught me how to fuck. So. There's that.
I really hope that there is somebody that finds us on some platform, and it's like, I love H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds, and this is like this chronological thing for this podcast episode. This sounds cool, and then they get to a certain point, and they're like, these guys are filthy mouthed. What am I listening to? And then at that point, we've done our job. And it's all gravy and rainbows. But that pleases me. But that said, the H.G. Wells preface, yes, he had his controversies when you read into that stuff. But we're looking at the work and the adaptations of it. So that said, let's get into the War of the Worlds. Dave, did you read this as a kid? I feel like big sci-fi horror kids, this is a thing. Because
I did read this.
Yes.
And I have a copy of a printing of it, and I tried to look for a date and I couldn't find it. It's a Whitman classic. It's not really worth anything. I mean, I found it the exact same book on the Amazons and eBays for as little as $6.
Mm-hmm. But the character.
So it's not really worth anything, but it is to me. So this has been in. If you open the inside cover, it's got Turner's, which is my grandparents' name. It's got their address and phone number in Indianapolis, Indiana, and so it is old. Like this is from when my mom was a kid, and
wait, is that when they lived next to Jim Jones?
And that is when they lived next to Jim Jones of Jim Jones cult fame. So there's a possibility that Jim Jones may have borrowed this book to read at some point. I have nothing to go on to say he did. I have nothing to go on who said he didn't.
Time is a flat fucking circle. Everything comes back around on itself. This is amazing. Holy shit.
Wow. So, but I did read this when I was a kid and knew of the radio controversy, which we'll get into a little bit more later. Yes. I'm just going to say, as a dumb kid, I always got H.G. Wells and Orson Welles, and I kind of smushed them together into one person. So
Right.
there is that as a big dumb kid.
I thought they were just related. I'm like, oh, that's his brother or son or something. No.
Yeah, that doesn't appear.
But did you know that they did meet after? I want to say it was in the 40s.
Okay.
I read, I forget. Well, I mean, the radio drama was 38, so it's not a far cry to say the 40s. But they did actually meet after the whole radio controversy, which is, I mean, you think of War of the Worlds being this almost at this point just so old. I mean, it's 125 years old this year, which a good year to finally do this. That's a great year.
In case there's anybody out there who doesn't know, Chris, what is the controversy about the War of the Worlds?
The radio show?
Yeah. I mean, we may cater to some younger people who may not really know what that is, what the controversy is.
Okay. So Wells had I don't know what you would call them back in the day, a production company, a drama company, Mercury Theater on the air. And they had only been a thing for a few months prior to that Halloween Eve in 1938 when they presented the War of the Worlds. And it had been a thing that was hard to finish, and they had went through a bunch of different drafts, and most everybody thought it was trash. But they finally, I don't know if they just kind of gave up and took like their last rewrite and was like, all right, that's as good as it's getting. Wells didn't seem that involved from what I read, at least with the rehearsals of it, but he'd listened to recordings of it, and then, yeah. Long story boring. We get to that night, and one of the most interesting, I would say, the most interesting radio story of all time is born, where there is a panic that is, in some articles you read, would say mass hysteria, where the public listens in on this radio broadcast and thinks we're under attack by Martians. And to be 1938, no TV, you're just listening. What would you do with that?
And that is what I always thought. I was always led to believe that there was like panic in the streets and just mass chaos across the country.
Right. Me, same.
Yeah, but apparently maybe that is a little overblown. Apparently there may have been some people who missed the kind of introduction at the start.
Right.
And throughout the show, I think I saw one video that said that there were 11 or 12 times during the show that they repeated that this was a reading and had, this is just a production of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
But it was narrated in a way that if you missed those times, it sounded like a radio broadcast.
One thing that I read about radio stations at the time is that every half hour on the hour, they would take a station break, kind of like a bumper kind of a thing, to be like, you're listening to whatever station, New York 107 or something.
I think they don't just take them. I think they're required to take them, and I think they still are.
But during this broadcast, they didn't follow those rules for whatever reason, whether it was manufactured, thought of prior to, or just the format that they were doing. But the only thing that didn't follow those rules were news bulletins. So you listening to this and you don't get your station break, but you get this news bulletin not on the half hour. I can see why that would be a little bit like, wait, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
And it wasn't like a big difference. It was their half-hour break was something along the lines of 40 minutes, but still, when you have those kind of things that are somewhat set in stone, I would think that it's not hard to think that there was some kind of a panic, even if it was overblown. I did read about police being showing up to the station and being like, "What the fuck's going on?"
Oh, and I did read that there were a large number of calls
Yes.
to police stations, but it sounded like most of them were not reporting things, but actually like asking, like, "Hey, I heard this on the radio. Is this real?" etc.
Right.
And I did hear a few stories about maybe some people in Appalachia that like took off for the hills, and it was days before they could find them and talk them back home and convince them that it was all,
Right.
just a fake. But so there was clearly some panic, but maybe not the widespread panic. Terrible band that that you may have been led to believe.
Yeah.
And that the radio station, I heard the radio station and H.G. Wells himself kind of relished in that myth.
Yeah, I mean,
radio was young at the time.
Yeah. Now I've read stuff about like, kind of backwoods people shooting at water towers and stuff, which is funny, but I mean, if you take into account the time and you can't turn on CNN or bring up your fucking media, find out what's really going on. You just get these snippets. I would probably be kind of freaking out a little bit too. But did you have listened to some of it? What are your thoughts on listening to it now, or since when you've heard it, parts of it?
So clearly I'm not going to be fooled by anything. I know the history, I know what I'm listening to, but I did hear it, and it is available on the YouTubes, and I want to say it's available on the Spotify as well. If it's not the radio broadcast, I know I did listen to also the Moody Blues music album of War of the Worlds.
That's not.
But it is definitely
that's Jeff Wayne, dude.
Jeff Wayne.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
I've got a whole thing on that.
Okay. But it is definitely on the YouTube, and I did watch it. But I listened to it, and I had things going on as well, so I didn't give it my full attention. But it starts off. I mean, like, it seems legit at the time. They're talking about other things, and they
have they're
are talking about
live broadcasting this like kind of band playing.
Yeah, it's like a ball or something like that. Yeah. And then they break in
Raymond Rockello and his 6-piece orchestra, something like that.
Yeah.
And
Ben Folds and the Ben Folds 5.
Yeah. And they play for, I don't know, 30 seconds, a minute, and then they cut back in, and they're like, they didn't tell the story one-to-one like the original.
Right.
They kind of Americanized it and brought it over to the United States and based it kind of over here. But God, my dad had a cassette tape when I was a kid, and he had a couple. There was a Superman one that was really cool, and this one, and I really loved this one. And it had this kind of uneasiness to me because knowing the stories of that kind of a panic and stuff, and there really is two parts to the play. Like the first part that we've been talking about, which is what you would think got people scared, but when you listen to the second part, it really is just a radio drama. And then at the end, Orson Welles gives kind of a statement, and it, it's just cool. It's a cool moment in time, and certainly sci-fi, but there's something very horror about it that I even felt big time as a kid listening to it and really enjoy.
It's a neat concept that you would play it so straight. It's to me, I likened it to when I was listening to it and when I was thinking about this for the podcast. It's the original found footage.
Yes, absolutely.
It is not dressed up. It is dressed down to appear authentic.
Yeah.
And so, it is that. And, probably Orson Welles was very ahead of his time to do it the way he did it. Much like H.G. Wells was probably, very ahead of his time to write some of the things he wrote.
Right.
We talked about the discovery of the canals and that maybe he wasn't the first one to write this invasion story, but it's always hard to tell, are science fiction writers predicting the future or are they influencing the future?
Good point.
So.
Good point. So to end the kind of radio thing, it has been recreated a few different times over the decades. The two most notable ones being in Ecuador in 1949 that led to a riot. And then in Brazil in 1971 that led to the military shutting the station down afterwards for a few days. 1971, people. Like, that's...
It makes sense to me, though, because I do believe that as a species, as a whole, we're getting dumber. Like, Idiocracy is not just a movie, it's happening.
Very likely. I also, we're at each other's beck and call now, whereas before, we were around, you were around your people and your people only. So if you were, but now you're around everybody on the internet. So you see more things, and it'll be interesting in the course of humanity. I wonder sometimes. But what we don't have to wonder is what was the next adaptation of this book. We haven't really talked about the book itself. I mean, I guess, do we really need to? Because, I mean, it's 125 year anniversary this year. The story. What do you think of the story of War of the Worlds itself?
I think it's great. I think it's very interesting, and I think it's the original story, and it's been a while since I've read it like through.
Yeah.
But the original story kind of rides that line of, hey, science over everything. But then it also kind of veers into, and there's some symbolism with the destruction of the church and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And and it's prominent in several of the movies, the retelling, especially some of those early 1950s version, where the preacher man gets his comeuppance, or I don't know if comeuppance is the right word. He gets killed.
Yeah.
Because he refuses to believe that God won't protect him.
Yeah.
But then it also veers into, well, the germs are here because God put them here to protect us.
Right.
Because God knew that these germs would be necessary in the future to protect us from, the Martians. So it kind of straddles that line a little bit, but there are other things that are very prescient. Can you imagine in your wildest dream, would you imagine that in 1890 someone would basically predict the invention of a laser?
Right.
That seems insane to me. The just mere presence of mind in 1890 to think ahead and say, this alien population may not look like us with just a different color skin. Because, I mean, you go to Star Trek and then, the aliens are basically just us with weird bone structures in their forehead or weird skin coloring. But otherwise, they're us. Yeah. But, H.G. Wells went beyond that, and he said, okay, they probably would have evolved in this manner, and that would have done this to their physiology.
I would say my latest favorite part of War of the Worlds. So I listened to the audiobook that I have. I got like an H.G. Wells collection on Audible years ago, and I listened to War of the Worlds, read by David Tennant, the 10th Doctor, which was fucking rad. Nice. But it scared the shit out of me at one point. I hope I can remember to come back to that. But listening to the description of the Martians and how their bodies are designed to work constantly 24/7. They don't have use for their limbs like we do. So they have these tentacles and they don't have a need for sex. And their offspring kind of buds off them like a plant, like a flower or something. Getting into that was fucking cool. And how they're sustained by the blood of other organisms, humans in this instance, and get blood transfusions to kind of feed themselves, sustain themselves, I guess.
Almost like an alien vampire.
Yeah. And I mean, they were very described more along the lines of like a bear-sized octopus more than a little green man. And certainly not like the weird little slimy brown creatures from the 53 movie or like a Will Smith knockoff War of the Worlds movie, which we'll get into later. But I really love those moments. The other thing that I want to talk about the novel before we can kind of move on from it, it's interesting to me. He jumps around a lot and kind of reveals the narrator lives before the book's over. So some element of suspense in those kind of harrowing moments is lost, which is. I wish I could go back and be like, is this what you want to do? Or I mean, do you want to build suspense, or are you just like, what? I don't know what you're. I don't love that, but there was that, and our narrator suffers a nervous breakdown at the end of the story, which is weirdly reassuring because you don't get that in horror and sci-fi when these big events happen, and you got to think like, you get to the end of The Thing or The Fly or whatever, anything, and you've lived through this fucking traumatic thing. Are you gonna be okay?
Yeah, that's kind of largely not unexplored these days, but it's also very Lovecrafty, even though it predates Lovecraft.
Yeah.
So,
and I
very wild stuff.
I really love that. Any other things you want to talk about the book? I felt like we just kind of skipped over books, so I had to bring us back. But any other thing you want to talk about the book before we launch forward 60 years?
No, let's jump forward. Let's
hop in the time machine, jump. Sherman. Let's go. That's not how he said that, but Gene Barry, 1953.
Peabody.
A somehow more Americanized story even than Orson Welles of the 30s. I liken it to a more of a Michael Bay movie of the 50s, if you can wrap your brain around that. That's kind of the way I view this movie. But here it is. What thoughts, opinions, Dave? How do you feel about this bad boy?
It is one. I always like one thing I like about watching older movies is the cringe factor. Like things that are said or done or attitudes that they had then that were obviously considered pretty normalized enough to be like this is on a mainstream movie.
Right.
Whether you have like actors talking about people racially certain ways, or most often it's actors talking about women certain ways or treating women certain ways, and that's kind of normalized. One of the interesting things about War of the Worlds from 1953
Yep.
is one of the townsfolk is a Mexican and or Spanish descent. He's a Latino, and he talks about oh, we can sell tacos and hot dogs, and it's like, and it's not. I wonder were audiences in 1953 going, oh, here we go with this woke bullshit, because of it, and clearly not. But it was just striking. Now the sexism.
Hold on, before we leave the tacos, I gotta say, if there was a down cylinder somewhere, and we were there, if there was a taco truck, that would be rad.
Fuck yeah,
that
man!
would be fucking rad. Oh my god.
Look, I don't care how racist you are. Tacos make everything better.
Absolutely. If I'm gonna get Death Raid, give me a taco beforehand. It ain't gonna be that bad. But the hysterical women. Continue. Sorry, I just had to say, taco truck makes everything.
What the main female character of the movie is not hysterical. She's actually got a doctorate. But the scientist who just happens to be fishing in the area, who is an expert on astronomy and physics, and maybe do it all thing. Like I don't want to go too far into my usual rant that Hollywood doesn't understand intelligence. So he just knows everything. But she's got her doctorate, and she's like, oh, I hope Dr. whatever comes, and maybe he'll come, and he's dreamy and he knows everything, and he does this, and he wrote this the other day, and he's like, oh, I know him, and then he points to himself, and she's like, oh, I didn't recognize you with your Clark Kent glasses and your 5 o'clock shadow.
Are you George Reeves? You're dreamy.
It's kind of ridiculous, but he's very flippant to the idea that she has a doctorate, and he just assumes, and correctly so, that if she has a doctorate, she must be a librarian. Like, is that the only thing a woman can do with a doctorate? I think that's true. I mean, but the movie kind of,
I think
there is another female scientist later, but I'm thinking I don't remember that she had more than like 1 or 2 lines.
Is that when they kind of get the alien eye and
yeah.
That part needed more stuff to happen. What do you think of the kind of tri-eye tentacle and then the brown skinned kind of alien with the suction cup hands? What do you think of that design? Before we get to the flying machines.
So when I try to put myself into the 1953 mindset, I think it's pretty great. They have the classic, like it's not a tripod, it's a flying saucer.
Yeah.
But then they just say, well, they have they actually have tripods. They're not actually flying. It's just that the legs are made invisible to the electromagnetic shielding.
Yeah.
But if they could do that, why not make the whole ship invisible? So that's kind of I'm in my mind. I think it was just easier to make them float than it was to make tripod legs.
I thought the same thing. I mean, to a degree. Yeah, I mean, I like them for what it is, the design of the creatures and the kind of tri-eye thing. Like in the 50s, that maybe would have blown my mind. But then to see the, I'm just gonna call them the flying machines because I mean, to call them tripods is, it, it, even though it is true, it's not at all.
Right. It seems dumb to call it a
Yeah,
tripod when there's not any visible legs.
I absolutely think that design itself is iconic.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
can't. It's part of history. It's so iconic. Um, the I had the Criterion Collection Blu-ray, and there is some great commentary, some great special features on the special effects, and they did stuff in this movie, like the kind of force field stuff, um, that they're not really sure how the fuck they did it. Like
Okay.
looking back, like there's
Okay.
a film historian who's like, I mean, we've recreated, and they actually did in one of the special features, like recreated kind of a little bit of a scene with the flying machine and the force field, and they're like, this is the best we could do because we don't know what they did, and for it to be like that 70 years later is kind of amazing.
I think it. Yeah, I think it looks great. I thought the
Yeah.
tripods looked great. I thought every bit of it looked great. I thought the heat ray looked great. The first time they use it on our only minority member of the town, so there are no black people in the town, so we will say that. But the only minority member of the town is one of the three guys that waving the white flag, and it's like,
Yeah.
we'll show them the white flag. They'll understand. That means we mean you no harm. And they get mowed down by the heat ray. That first shot of it is the worst example of that. But after that, it gets better when they're mowing down like the military guys.
Mhm.
Like there are several times where they'll like disappear, aka disintegrate. But then for a couple frames, there'll be like the black shadow left behind before it
Yes.
finally
Yes.
goes away. And I thought it looked fantastic. I was super into it
Yeah. And
from start to
it's
finish.
very
So
spectacle for a 50s, an early 50s movie. There's so much spectacle. A lot of miniature stuff too, which is super. It really is. I mean, God, especially for that time, so well done. It'd have been
yeah.
done well 20, maybe 30 years later, still well done in that regard.
The and I'm sure it is miniatures stuff in the town where the um, ships are crashing into the town
Mhm.
and they destroy the church and stuff like that. It it looks great.
Yeah. And we will come back to 53 War of the Worlds in a moment. We're going to take a quick diversion. Something Dave brought up a little while ago. Just what we say, like 25 years later, 1978, Jeff Wayne comes out with this rock opera concept album that it's got like this progressive rock almost vibe with synths and orchestral parts and just this there's some singing but a lot of like instrumental stuff. And if any of that like rings your dinner bell, go check it out. It's something I didn't even know about until like the mid 2000s and bought it immediately, and I'm like, where's this been all my life? This is
It
oddly one of my favorite things.
it's available on Spotify. I
Yes.
did not get through the whole thing, but I did listen to quite a bit of it.
It's a product of
And
its time as well. You'll listen to it and be like, "Oh, that
oh
was
yeah, yeah.
78." But
But I put it on, and one day when I was cleaning the garage
oh,
and just jammed out
mhm.
while I was cleaning the garage, and I was totally I was totally cool.
If
It is what it is.
if you
So,
like progressive rock, not like super crazy, intricate, like crazy, almost avant-garde stuff. It's not like that. It's still very accessible, but it's, I
A
mean,
little dated
it
progressive
is
rock.
dated. They had another version that came out in 2012 that has a Liam Neeson, Dave,
Oh,
voiceover, but it just isn't as good as the original. It just isn't as good. But I love this album and absolutely recommend it. If any of that sounds like something you would like, do go check it out. I highly recommend it. As the metal guy, this is not a metal album. Or the metal
no,
guys, I
oh
should say. We're
no,
both metal
no.
guys, but this is its own thing. It's got a little bit of a rock thing, but I mean the singer for the Moody Blues does sing. I want to say, is it Forever Autumn? Uh, and yeah, there's some singing. Anyways, I'm getting long winded. Check it out. It's great. Jumping ahead 12 years nowadays, something I can't wait to talk about. 1980s Fox TV series, The War of the Worlds, which isn't immediately apparent that it is a continuation of a 1953 movie.
I did not watch it. I know it exists, but I did not get to watch it, and I have never watched it. So
It is also a product of its time, unfortunately. It
okay,
is one of those very early Fox TV shows, so it didn't have a great budget. But it's like from that Married with Children, 21 Jump Street, Superboy. God, what other like immediately early Fox shows? But like it's trying the best with what it has, and this is when Fox was trying to throw anything at the wall that would stick. But it got 3 seasons, I want to say. But just the fact that it is a continuation of 1953 Gene Barry movie, and the aliens have been dormant. They didn't die; they just went dormant, and they were put in storage by the government, and they're breaking out and they're taking over human bodies. So it's got a invasion of the body snatchers kind of line on this too. And
okay.
and they bring Anne Robinson back to reprise her role from the 1953 film as the I forget the name of the character, the librarian. But she's been she's got some mental issues. She's got some PTSD.
Okay.
She's had electrodes and shit to try to like deal with all this and find out what she knows, and she's kind of lost her mind in a way. But that said, I mean, we are now, so that was 20 something years later. I would love another continuation of that. Keep it
Okay.
going. Like every 20, 30 years, just get back into it for a couple seasons. It'd be super hot. Paris Hilton says yes.
I
Probably.
I'm there for it.
Um,
It this story. Before we go into maybe another more modern telling,
mhm.
has been so influential. And it's easy to see, and we talk about it all the time. There's no truly original ideas. Like everything builds off of something, and you have War of the Worlds. You have elements of that in really every alien attacks, alien invasion movie that we have.
Mhm.
From Mars Attacks, which
Yeah.
we probably need to do on the show
Absolutely
sometime,
need to do.
to Independence Day. Um, you have these stories, and really, Independence Day is the most modern, most directly influenced, I feel like, movie to War of the Worlds, because you have a lot of the same like creature design with the tentacles. They have some forelimbs, but the they're weak. They have the big crested head to support their enormous brain. So
Yeah. Body's useless. It's all the brain. But we're gonna talk a little bit more about Independence Day here very soon. Are you ready to spring forward again, my friend?
sure.
We are moving from the 80s at a rapid pace to 2005, where not one, not two, but fucking 3 movie adaptations come out in the same year. Because that's why. Obviously this one, but 2 others.
And not open, not public domain yet.
Yeah.
In 2005. So, the whoever's controlling the rights at that time authorized 3 versions of this out at the same time.
They were taking baths in $100 bills in 2005. I tell you what. The first is the Asylum release featuring C. Thomas Howell, none other. And the effects are very bad. Have you watched any of this movie ever?
I have seen some clips from it.
Same.
I saw one where they're not, if I remember right, they're not like tripods as much. They look a lot more like mechanical crabs.
Yeah. Yep. I think so. The Asylum studio is the Sharknado guys, but before they were the Sharknado guys, they were the Transmorpher guys. They were those guys, the cash in on summer blockbuster guys. And that should tell you the quality of what this is. But somehow, maybe a pact with the devil, it got a sequel, which I've not seen anything about. I didn't try to watch it for this because
Invasion,
something like that. But yeah, with another C. Thomas Howell. Not another, but
it's really amazing that they actually acquired the rights and didn't just be like Worlds of the War.
Yeah. The next one, still in 2005, we get the Pendragon release, which features actors and also actresses. That's a joke I wrote in my notes.
Okay.
Nobody has a name in this movie. I mean, it's literally bottom tier budget, the worst effects, but unfortunately, it's about the most faithful adaptation you can get to the original novel.
Okay.
And the CGI looks bad for any point in history. Gene Barry in 1953 would look at this and be like, you need to start over.
That is the one I've seen a still image of the alien, and it really does look like an octopus.
Yeah. But
the tentacles are super thin and spindly.
There's I think they made models of things, but then they applied it in that Tommy Wiseau The Room kind of fashion with like green screens and shit behind them for the backgrounds, which looks immediately terrible and immediately fake. And they use that for the Martians as well. But if you see the actual physical Martians that they created, they don't look bad, but when they applied them in the movie, they look flat and terrible. And they've re-released this a couple times, tried to re-edit it and shit. And I mean, even though when I say a more faithful adaptation to the novel, that still doesn't mean it's good, unfortunately.
Sure.
But that said, those 2 out of the way, let's talk.
Is it set in the late 1800s? Yep. Oh, okay.
It is. And it does that kind of thing that Wells did where the narrator goes to the cylinder that has crashed. And it's like, well, this is interesting. Let me go home and tell my wife. 3 days later, I went back to the cylinder. It's like kind of laissez-faire until
enthralling narration.
Yeah, and it's kind of slow, but it. Check it out if that seems like it's up your alley. But let's go now. Same year. We're not traveling years. We're not time traveling, Dave. Spielberg, Tom Cruise, The War of the Worlds.
So I have watched this 2005 version several times.
Speak me more truths, my friend.
Yeah, I think we fall on different sides of the spectrum for this, and maybe we're not quite as far apart as opposites, but I think it's generally good. Tom Cruise will not do a movie unless they feature a scene with him running directly at the camera for at least 90 seconds. Right. So you do have this. You do have a very humanized story, but like his character in the 2005 is a dick, and so this is the version I'm most familiar with, though, movie and TV wise. Yeah, like this is the version I'm most familiar with. So,
school us, my friend.
You have a young Dakota Fanning as his daughter. You've got his teenage son, who's the rebellious son,
as Dick in training, I would say.
yeah, I would say so.
From the same
steals his cherry fucking Mustang and fucking wrecks it.
They were made for each other.
Yeah, he's a chip off the old block.
But not Martians. Not Martians in this joint. Essentially, maybe. No. I mean, possibly still.
I don't think they ever say where they come from.
But they're not explicitly Martians like the other adaptations. They come from the ground. Whether they've been buried for who knows how long or what.
Well, the machines are buried.
Yeah.
The pilots come down in the lightning.
Oh, fuck. I forgot about that. You're right.
Yeah. But I think they got some really cool scenes where, Asgard. Like, even when they first come up out of the ground, the machines, and they fucking just vaporize some people.
Yes.
And I thought that was very cool. The 53 version does have like the city riot and people just destroy and loot the scientists. Like, okay, what is my scientific instruments going to help you any at this point? Like, that's not going to help you survive anything, you know. But they do, and humans are not rational creatures, and time is a flat circle. So, I could see it going down that way. But I actually really like the Tim Robbins character, who is the guy that gets is in the basement with Tom Cruise and his daughter. He's so fucking creepy. Like, he's trying to rally Tom Cruise to his side to fight against the aliens, but at the same time, he's like, seems like he's got his eye on the little daughter too, so he's really creepy. And he talks about, you know, if your dad's dead, you know, I'll protect you. You just stay with me. But I don't know. He is creepy in the same way that his character in The Pick of Destiny is creepy, and you know, has his ulterior motives. Tim Robbins is he's a national treasure, highly underrated actor, national treasure, Tim Robbins. But you know, you have that scene, and that is the similar scene to what you see in 53 in the basement with the tentacles coming in and the aliens.
That is my favorite part of the 2005 is the Tim Robbins underground. Also, call him back real quick to the H.G. Wells, the original, where the narrator, is it the curate that's with him, gets hysterical, and the aliens are prowling outside or patrolling, and he has to knock him out, which leads to his being captured by the aliens, probably to his death. And you're like, wow, our hero just killed that guy. I mean, obviously he had no choice, but I mean, it makes you feel different ways. And I mean, the Tim Robbins thing in this, I mean, the guy's obviously broken mentally, and then, like you said, he's kind of a creep with the girl. Like,
Yep.
yeah, there's a lot of layers
And
there.
yeah, I could have seen him like throwing Tom Cruise under the bus, throwing him to the aliens to get away with the girl. I mean, there's just so much could have happened there. And,
Yeah.
And Tim Robbins plays it perfectly. Like I said, he is definitely a national treasure here. But I think that's right after this, Dakota, the daughter does get taken prisoner.
Yeah.
And Tom has to give himself up to stay with her.
We get the red.
It ends up in the first takedown of one of the machines.
In this, which
I
don't think had been in any other version before this. Weirdly,
yeah, it's in the book.
It's in
they're kind of. It's in the book, the red weaves, and then weeds, and then the book also has the black toxic cloud.
Yes.
And this, like, I don't think anything else does the toxic cloud that I remember. The 2005 with Tom Cruise here, they do like when they take prisoners, they're like always shitting out the blood to fertilize these red plants.
Yeah.
So
a proper take on this right now I would love with the gas, with the Navy, the Thunder Child. We get the escape by ferry in this. But it doesn't,
which was pretty neat, but they're dead.
Yeah, we don't get the big ship come in to fight the tripods like the original story that was very harrowing and very like kind of amazing.
Yeah.
Like it damages a tripod, which, we're trying to fight these things. What do you do? And then you think it's destroyed, then it comes out and it's on fire and it destroys another one by ramming into it. Like, that is prime real estate for some modern special effects. But that said, what do you think of the CG in this?
I think it's I think it's okay. I think it's passable.
Granted, it's almost
it's 2005. Yeah, but I think it's okay. At this point, it's okay. I feel like it is easier to do a ship than it is to do a person's face.
Yeah.
Like we're just too good evolutionary wise at picking out faces and picking out something wrong with faces.
Yeah, dude. So
I thought the CG was okay.
The Flash I just watched. And going into the controversy on that one, but there is some CGI in that on human faces, human characters, where you're just like, did you run out of money? You're a fucking comic book movie. But anyways.
I didn't read it. I saw an article the other day, and I purposely avoided it because I haven't watched The Flash yet, and I want to avoid spoilers, and I was afraid it would be spoiler. But it sounds like somebody in the production of The Flash made it sound like, oh no, we purposely held back on the special effects. We didn't want them to look too good. And
I don't buy that.
Like,
what?
What? I don't even need to watch it, and I don't buy that.
I've read a theory. I've read a theory. We'll get into that maybe at the end of the show. I've read a theory.
Okay.
I've read a theory. But
yeah, I do believe there's intentional low budget, and you can have big budget that's intentionally made to look low budget. But that's a totally different than not pulling off special effects.
I think
So,
big budget trying to look low budget it obviously works way better than low budget trying to look big budget, like the Pendragon movie. Like, we're going to replace all the backgrounds. We're going to green screen the whole fucking shit, and it's going to be fabulous. No, it's going to look fake and cheap as soon as you put this out.
yeah, I mean, that almost sounds like they were putting money into special effects that were unnecessary.
Yeah,
like you're already creating a model. Just do like a matte painting behind or something like that. I mean,
go ask Miss Pennyworth next door if you can sit at her window and just film outside of it with the guy sitting at his desk.
Sure.
Rather than putting him... Anyways.
The 2005 does have featured Gene Barry and Anne Robinson, by the way.
Does it?
In cameos.
I didn't know that.
So,
Where were they?
According to IMDb, Gene and Anne are the grandfather and grandmother.
Really? I did not rewatch. I watched some scenes over again, but I did not go back and rewatch the full movie. I am kicking myself in the ass now. Wow. What a cool fucking thing. That's cool. The last thing.
I mean, Spielberg, man. It's a very Spielberg movie.
I feel like it's a little bit more than
Spielberg. It's dark Spielberg. I'll go that far as dark Spielberg.
What do you think of the design of the alien? Does it remind you of anything that we've talked about already?
Does it remind?
Independence Day, perhaps.
But like I said, Independence Day is very much based on those original designs.
Yeah,
it's like
we're doing the time as a flat circle kind of a thing. Like, to me, you could have taken that monster out of the Independence Day suit, like in the whole scene with Data, and put him in this, and it wouldn't be that different. They look very similar. But I mean, like you said, it's a derivative of that, and it does what it needs to.
Yeah. I mean, they are very similar concepts, or very similar look, very similar design. So yeah.
Anything else you want to say on Spielberg's version, where we time travel once more, maybe a couple times?
No, I'm ready to move on. All
right. Now we're not gonna stick too long on this next one, but 2012, Dave, saw a little Malaysian animated feature called War of the Worlds Goliath, which is set... I didn't even know this existed until doing this research. Has a smattering of B-tier celebrities as well as voice actors. It's got this anime kind of thing, but it's set 15 years after the original novel. But we have used this technology from the Martians and have kind of developed our world into this kind of steampunk kind of thing. And humans have developed their own fighting machines. And of course, the Martians are going to come back for round 2 now, and it becomes a very anime, giant battle-y kind of thing, which ain't my kind of cup of tea.
Tech suits, mech suits, and shit like that.
Yeah, it goes a little too far into that regard, but that basic premise is cool. It's like this alternate history kind of a thing with that. I'm
looking at it on IMDb, and I'm seeing Nikola Tesla is a character, yes. Theodore Roosevelt, Robert Wells. I mean, just so
it's a cool idea that I was like, well, I guess I have to at least mention it, or one of the rabble is going to demand I cut one of my fingers off in solidarity.
And you're running out. You're running out of those.
I only have my claw hand left.
Take my good hand.
So fast forward a couple more years, 2019, we're almost in modern day. Holy shit. I guess that probably is considered modern day. But reminiscent of 2005, we get 2 series. in 2019 because that's why I wrote that joke. One set in
Nice.
modern time with Gabriel Byrne, no less. And it pulled off 3 seasons. It was on Epics or like something like that.
Okay.
And I watched one episode that was free and then didn't feel compelled to follow that up. Like they used sound to kill humans initially, and it was kind
Okay,
of
that's different.
it does a different thing, but it just didn't hit with me. The other series, this one was a mini series, I think. But this was set kind of in that kind of time of the late 1800s, early 1900s. But it aired within a month of the other show, which is so
Wow.
stupid.
Yeah.
But this tries to be closer to the book, but it still like misses the mark, like they tend to do. Like you see the tripod design, and it kind of looks like a crab too, and it's got those same kind of, we're making a sci-fi movie, so the lights have to have this blue hint to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're just like, I've seen this
in 2019. You would hope that we would be on that, but
yeah,
we are not.
Yeah.
Real quick, Gabriel, or what's his name?
Gabriel Byrne.
Gabriel Byrne. Yeah, I will never remember his name. He is always, to me, he's always going to be not Kaiser Soze. So. But I do like him. I do like him as a character actor.
And Hereditary, man. Hereditary.
Yes. The feckless father in Hereditary. Who might as well not even be there.
The last adaptation that I have in my notes, and we won't talk about it for very long, but literally just this year, April 2023, War of the Worlds: The Attack. Excuse me, War of the Worlds: The Attack. It is
War of the Worlds: Attack on your colon.
It is shot better than some of the 2005. It doesn't look bad.
Is it British?
Yes,
it's British.
It is. It's got some effects that look like they would have been outdated 15, 20 years ago, but it's and plus they try to really put the humor in. If you watch the trailer, you're gonna be like, "Oh, what?" But the acting isn't terrible, but they do that. I'm 30 years old, but pretend that I'm 16, okay? And they have this band of 3 characters that have to ride their bikes everywhere because, well, that may just be kind of a British thing, but like they are playing up that they're younger kids, and they are none under 25.
Or they're banking on getting the Stranger Things people.
Yes, that's exactly what I thought. And it kind of feels like it is trying to jump on the back of that a little bit.
Somebody picked up the wrong message from Stranger Things. They're like, you know what the Americans love? Kids on bikes.
Hey, you have a cousin, right? How old is he? 33. Could he pass as 16?
No.
Yeah.
Good enough.
But it's I mean, as bad
I'm
as
watching the trailer, and there are some pretty gnarly disintegration effects that look really cool.
There are some effects that aren't bad, but like when you get into the movie, they're so spread out because it doesn't have a great budget. You know, it is what it is. It's not the best by far. It's not the worst. Not quite as far, but it exists. So,
okay.
And lastly, there's been some video game adaptations. We won't get into that. We may have to do a video game horror episode at some point.
Yeah, I'm all for it. I kind of, going through the week, I kind of watched some trailers and some gameplay from the video game, and it looks pretty dope.
There is a new PC game that is in the work, early access, but it's a fucking survival game, which I guess makes sense, but I fucking am so tired of survival shit. As a PC,
I saw some gameplay where like if you go up to this neighbor and shine the flashlight in his eyes. He'll tell you about the other neighbor that is a gun nut, but now he's missing, and so then you know to go in his house and get a gun. Yeah.
There's some. We'll see. There's the premises there. You just gotta get the right people to do it.
And at its heart, the book and the story is just survival. You just,
yeah.
I mean, if you know the spoiler, if you know the end, you just have to live long enough for the germs to take over, or to kill the alien. So,
yeah.
Which, from a medical standpoint, if you want to go give that a quick talking about, it's not entirely far-fetched that maybe they have developed medicine to the point that like they're not exposed to germs, but that's really I take it back. It really is very far-fetched. So I'm not going to give you exact numbers because I've been drinking, but you have a 140 million cells in your body, and nearly half of them are not human cells, they're bacteria cells. Like we're not just us. We are an amalgamation of organisms. From the time you're born, you are born with bacteria in your gut that helps you break down food. At about the age of 6 weeks, your skin is colonized with the bacteria that protects you from infection. And it's kind of like, the good bacteria take up so much space, there's no room for the bad bacteria to move in. So, the idea that
right,
that maybe clearly life can go in so many divergent ways in other environments. That is absolutely true. That's one of the best things about this book and the idea of the tripods and the evolution of these aliens, the Martians. I really love all that thought process. But it's,
in a way,
I could be totally stupid, sound stupid when we find the aliens and like, nope, they don't have bacteria in their body, but it's hard to believe that you could really have something develop long enough to develop an intelligence and not be synergistic in some way with something else.
You make a great point. And you've kind of turned my brain a different direction thinking of that. And I'm not thinking so much of it as just the bacteria, like the common cold or whatever is what killed them. But more, you have this intelligent race, this intelligent creatures, um, that have prospered and have developed their bodies and their environment in these ways. And ultimately, what kills them is almost happenstance. It's not even something, you know, um, which is, going back to the original, the H.G. Wells story. Like maybe it was somewhat of this divine intervention. Like, um, I mean,
Is it divine or is it nature?
I don't.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of it. Like this infinitely smarter creature is beaten just by kind of randomality. Is randomality a word?
It is now.
Randomality is a
now.
flat circle. Is all I gotta say.
Hashtag randomality.
If that's not a new thing in the next Mortal Kombat, I don't fucking want it. Brutality, babality, randomality. Dave, I have a question, or maybe like a quick discussion, if we have time, before we end this War of the Worlds show. And it may be a little bit too broad. It may be just enough for its own show. what would we like to see in a future adaptation? Like, what would be the ultimate for us? Like, is there like a film, limited series? What would you like to see? And let's just talk for a minute and see where we end up.
I think I think to take it to the next level, you almost have to take some of the circumstance out of it, some of the happenstance, some of the hashtag randomality out of it.
Now
So
that's my
if you
favorite,
do
Dave. You're breaking my heart.
if you do a limited series and now you have scientists that we have to engineer a virus or a bacteria that will defend us against the aliens, then I think you add something else and you add something for the conspiracy theories to be like, see,
Right.
Hashtag Fauci for prison.
I feel like you are kind of right. Like it can't be. I mean, it depends on how faithful you want to be to the book, right? Or to the story overall. Do you want it to end that way because people will know that already? Or do you want to swerve them? How much do you want to swerve them? And I mean, you know, um,
I
that's a
think
good point.
I think Independence Day, the way they did their sequel, where okay, now what is the fallout from the original? Like we didn't just we beat them and then forget they existed. Like
Right.
we incorporated their technology and their knowledge into our society, but then they came back in new ways. And if you wanted to keep continuing, there's also that possibility. Okay, so they died because of the germs that were here, or because we engineered germs to attack them, whatever it was. But then we're going to adapt their technology, and they're going to come back with reinforcements or with you know now better knowledge of the microbiology of Earth,
Right.
and
That's a good point.
so
Smaller machines. Something that I think would be uh kind of cool. First off, I think we need like a director that's gonna like take this serious and like
okay, okay.
put some respect on it and really try to bring it into a real world. Maybe a Nolan.
Oh, Christopher Nolan.
He's just the first one I thought of. I'm not stone cold set on that. But I feel like the Martians and the machines, and I feel like they do need to be Martians because fuck it, why not? Like it needs to be
Okay.
Martians. They need to be more dangerous somehow. Figure that out. And it may be, I was thinking maybe more of a Cloverfield, at least to start off aspect.
So what if they are Martians, but they're not on Mars when we get to Mars, and we've started colonizing Mars,
Ooh,
and they just return home and find us, we're colonizing their planet,
that'd be a good
and
point.
they just assume like, oh, these fucking humans, we left them alone when we went to explore the universe, and here they've done this to us. So then it's them thinking they're getting revenge on us for destroying their home planet, when really that's not how it went down.
We've outstepped our bounds. And then
yeah, and they kick our ass and send us back to Earth.
and then I mean, I think just seeing us there would be a great like starting point to where they're like, no, we're gonna come to you and fucking dick in the dirt. I would like to see a more slow build to the machines, and
Okay.
even a more slower build to saying the Martians themselves. And really get a little bit more of a horror thing. Um,
Okay.
but I think I wouldn't say more than all, but like a big thing I would like to see is some more of that anatomy that H.G. Wells had, because I think that's so cool and really try to explain it in some kind of movie setting, like where they have no need for limbs like we do, or like appendages. So they have these fucking tentacles. They don't have a need to eat, so they don't have a digestive system, and the offspring and all that shit would be super. It would make it feel more alien to me, I think. So,
So that gives me two ideas. One, what if our director was, and I've given him my share of grief. I think we both have.
oh no, don't say David
But
Gordon Green.
no, I'm saying M. Night Shyamalan. Because he did that beautifully with Signs, like holding
Yes.
back and not showing anything until later in the movie. So I would, if I was producing it and hiring him as my director, the first conversation is going to be, look, we don't have to have some crazy big finale twist. We don't have to that. I would rather have a few surprises along the way than to have this big twist at the end. Because I kind of feel like he has been a victim of his own success.
That would be a twist by not having one.
Yeah, and I feel like
a
he's
letdown?
really forced that twist in there. I feel like he's forced that twist.
Oh yeah.
But like I said, I still want surprises. I still want surprises. You can even have a big surprise. There's this, to me, there's a difference between a surprise and a twist.
Now, so we know, fans of the OG know that they're more of this octopus kind of a tentacled creature. I mean, when you see them for the first time, I feel like that would itself be a swerve. They're like, oh, what? I feel like a lot of people be like, they're not little gray, big-eyed things, little gray men. There's so many. We could do a whole episode on this. We may have to fucking do more things like this. It's just fun to talk about what we would like to see in
oh no, I'm
adaptation.
I'm down the rabbit hole with you, man. I enjoyed this.
Yeah, it would. God, we just may have to do our do a mock script one day for something, just to see. Or not even a script, just like some kind of an outline. See what we come up with. But okay.
So my other casting thing that you've kind of guided me towards in my mind is, what if this is going on and one of the scientists that we have to pull in is Dr. Ian Malcolm?
The Bloom himself, huh?
Yeah, the Bloomster. And, when he's not busy marveling at the cloning of dinosaurs, then he's now being tasked with helping to defend Earth from this this alien race that has wiped out the Mars colony and is now headed to Earth.
And he was in the 70s Body Snatchers. So call back to that. I wouldn't say throwback, or not even callback. Like, what do you say? Tip of the hat?
Acknowledgement.
Acknowledgement. Yeah. I mean, you could, so many options. Or you just go all unknowns, which there's merit in that. What do you think? Film or some kind of mini series, or just a TV, like HBO series or something, or just TV series? Fuck it. What do you feel?
You know what? I want to start with the TV series. I want to take the time and really build characters that are important to me. And you could at a later point, especially if you're holding off on the reveal, what if some of these characters that you come to know and love are you find out have been pulled into the plot of these aliens and are actively working with them, a la They Live.
potential.
So
Potential. If you,
that may be a step too far, but right now we're just throwing shit at the wall. So
yeah, yeah. If you want to hear us talk more about what we would like to see in our own kind of made up adaptations for stuff, let us know, because it's just fun to talk about. Anything else, Dave, you want to
very.
talk about War of the Worlds before we end? I mean, I don't know how you can rate this. I don't know if we can rate this without going into individual incarnations of it, but thoughts. Final thoughts, I guess. Maybe we'll just do that.
Final thoughts. Super cool, super influential story. Definitely feels ahead of its time. But the different adaptations really speak of the times they were made and the attitudes. And the 1953 is so classic, and yet I knew so much of it, but had never seen it. And so, being able to take the time to see it now, and it was great. It was not lost on me. I do like the 2005 movie. So I'm going to rate, if I was rating those two, the 1953, I'm probably going to give it a 7.5, because it's just so iconic. And the 2005, I don't know that it's really got any bad moments. That Tom Cruise is a dick, but I don't think that's I don't think that detracts for me that he's a dick and has to learn how to be a parent and be responsible. He up until this disaster, he's a dad, but he's not a father. He's a child who has no responsibility to anybody but himself, and he learns that. So I'm going to give the 2005 7.5 as well.
Wow, fair enough. What would you rate the Orson Welles broadcast? You had to give it a number, whatever qualifiers you feel.
Sure. So even, I mean, it's what, less than 20 years before the 1953. And so the 1953 to 2005, you got 52 years difference, and they got the same rating. The Orson Welles is not 20 years before the 53. And so, but I feel like it is ahead of its time, but I also felt let down because there's so much. I don't know, maybe I'm just a visual guy, because it happens in 50s movies too, and it happened in the 50 remake. In the radio broadcast, there's times where there's he's at a ball and these things are going on and you hear all this background noise, but then everyone will go silent so he can give his line, and there's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lines, and then right on cue the background noise comes up and the babbling of people, and it feels artificial. It is iconic. I won't give it a 7.5, but I would probably give it a 6.5.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Any of them you would like to rate? Not it's obviously that's not kind of what we were going into thinking when we're doing such a broad topic. But
God, I've seen.
How would you rate the Jeff Wayne album? How would you rate some of the TV shows?
The TV show. to just randomly start with the Fox TV show, just on premise alone, I'd give it an A. But on execution, you gotta knock a solid point off just because of no budget, like kind of cheesy. Maybe a point and a half. But worth checking out if you're a fan of War of the Worlds, especially 53 Worlds. But to continue that path, 53 War of the Worlds. I also would give that did you give it a 7.5? Because that's where I'm going. I want to say that's where you landed.
Yes, I did.
I think that's I absolutely agree. Now to jump back to the future, to 2005, C. Thomas Howell, I give 1. Pendragon, I give 0.1. 0.05. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. No, it's not that bad. They're
I was going to say that's harsh.
Yeah,
harsh.
I'm being facetious. I'm not even going to rate them. They're not my cup of tea. You may like them. That's fine. But Spielberg, Tom Cruise, 6. I'm going to give it a 6. I like parts of it. The Tim Robbins, I'm in agreement absolutely with you, is fantastic. Some of the effects are weirdly blurry to me watching it now. I may need to get this bitch in 4K and watch her again. See, yeah, she stands up. But War of the Worlds, The Attack, 4.
Okay.
Which, some ideas are in there. Some human ideas exist in this movie.
Oh. That does not sound great.
Yes. And then now to go back to Orson Welles, I'm gonna rate the radio broadcast a little higher than you. I'm gonna give it a 7.5.
Okay.
And the book itself, like I said, I have my problems with the book itself. I think there are some issues pacing wise and structurally that could have, there may be some H.G. Wells purists that would want to crucify me for this, but you're revealing your end of your story before you're to the end of your story. That doesn't build suspense. That removes suspense, dude.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, still, how can you not? I feel like I am obliged to have to give it a 9 out of 10, even with that, because of just what it did and being the OG, even though there was one at least before it. It is the OG alien invasion story that influenced the whole goddamn genre. And I've loved it since I was a kid. I'll continue to love it, and I'm sure if there's another one that comes out, I'll watch it. And I will say, if we could get Sasha Calle, the new Supergirl, in our new version, let's go ahead and get that to happen.
I'm sure we can.
I'm very okay with that. I mean, I'll use a good 3/4 of the budget just for that. But if Rabble, if you can let her know about potential casting call for that to come up and to be ready to just go ahead and accept it blindly, be great. And that's all I have to say about that.
All right. You heard it here, folks. Just accept what you're being told right here. Hashtag Horror House Chris is mainstream media.
Hey, media is a flat circle. You're a flat circle. We're all
media is a round square. But let's if you have something that you want to input, what is your favorite iteration of the story? Where would you take it next? What would you like to see done with it? We haven't even talked about the pop culture references outside of just a few, and the parody stuff. And so tell us what you think, where you're at. You can hit us up on Twitter, DM, or just tag us in a tweet at Sweetness, one with 6 E's in sweet, or at Horror House 2, because there are 2 of us.
You can email us horrorhousepodcast@gmail.com, or you can go to the Horror House page on Facebook.
You can hit us up on Slasher. I'm Horror House Dave.
I am Horror House
Chris. No. Hit us up on Slasher, the social media app for horror fans.
Friend me, bitch. That'd be a good shirt. Bumper sticker, maybe. Are bumper stickers still a thing? Really?
Bumpers are still a thing, so.
Fair. It's fair. Last but not least, do rate us wherever you're listening, whatever platform. Click them stars, click them hearts, click them likes if you like us, Horror House boys. And do share us around with your friends. Dave, you know what I was thinking the other day before we leave?
What's that?
I've not had the rabble throw a phone at their friend in so long.
It's time. I mean, this is the perfect time. Not only if they throw phones at friends, not only, Chris, are they sharing the Horror House, but they're preparing their friends for the incoming invasion.
This is true. This is absolutely true. I was listening to some of our older shows, and I was like, holy shit, throw a phone at your friend. I forgot that just naturally phased itself away from the show. And I was like, holy shit, I did that.
You became a kinder, gentler Chris.
I apparently did. Horror House has made me a better person, and it can make you a better person too. So like and subscribe.
Share it with your ex so they can become better people.
Yeah. Share it with anybody. Your pastor. And Sasha Supergirl. I think I pronounced her last name wrong, and I'm afraid to try to say it again. But
we'll just call her Supergirl for now.
Yeah. If I don't see her again as Supergirl, what's this life been for? Anyways, we will be back next week with more horror, man and ladies. So stick around, and it'll be cool. It'll be cool, whatever it is. And until then, Dave, same cemetery, different grave.
Right on. You nailed it. Nailed it.
Until I will forget to do it, and then it just disappears.
Yeah, that's probably just as likely.
Is that how shows end, Dave? Do people just forget that they existed?
Probably.
Is that how the Horror House will end one day? We just forget to do it?
Never. The Horror House will never end. We will slash and burn till the end of time.